Welcome back to Fire Emblem Thracia 776. This is the first chapter of, I suppose you could call it a new arc, although it's a much looser one that just kind of leads into the rest of the game, really, compared to the Manster arc, which is a much more focused portion of the game. We are back here in 2x speed, which I've decided that I really like for this playthrough. I'm learning more about creating a sort of let's play as I go along with this, and I'm realizing that for this sort of thing, if I'm doing an Ironman, it's probably best to go without animations. Otherwise, the chapters tend to run pretty long. You run out of things to say for the most part. So for some of these chapters, we're going to be going at 2x speed, or possibly even 3x speed for some of the much longer ones, at least for the time being. In some of the later chapters, you're going to see I actually turn animations off for various reasons, which I'll get into once we get there. But this is Chapter 8. This is a really basic map. It's actually pretty similar to Chapter 2 all in all. And I'm sure you see why. It's just bandits. There's nothing too fancy about this map. There's really no nasty surprises. Just has a rink with the boss that we'll get to in a little bit. I usually bring, like, it's almost always the same group. I end up bringing Safi because she has no fatigue. All of the, like, fighter and recruit type guys from the beginning arc, Halvin, Ashian, Ronan, just to give guys like Furious and Brighton a rest, even though some of them you can probably still deploy, especially like Brighton. I don't think I've ever had him truly fatigued, even using him pretty liberally. But you need Halvin and or Ashian for a recruitment in this anyway. Technically you don't need them, but it's a much easier route than the other route, which is to capture the unit, and perhaps you've seen them flash by just now, or maybe you can guess if you've never played this game. But you get Callian for free in this map. That's the Cavalier that's attacking right now. He's different from units like Finn in that the basic Cavalier in this game can actually use both lances and swords while mounted, rather than just only one weapon type. And he doesn't start with a sword in his inventory, I don't believe, so it can be hard to figure that out unless you kind of just piece it together later, or you see basically a promoted version of his class, and then you kind of put it together that way. So you spend a lot of time in this beginning area just because you got to get some of your mounted units through these trees. As you can see, I managed to keep Nana's fatigue low enough to bring her along. I like to bring Karen pretty much solely for this village in the lower right sort of part of the village proper. Because otherwise you got to have a unit wind around. And it's not an escape map or anything, so you can easily send somebody that way and just have them hang out there for the rest of the map if you want. But I like bringing Karen along anyway, just because I like to put items on her, like vulneraries and antitoxins. And that way, if somebody gets poisoned or hurt, I can usually get Karen there almost immediately. But you got to be careful if you bring her here, because there are bow users there. So that can end up in a dead Karen pretty quickly there. But it's good to have some 2 range here, because Karen can't exactly kill that brigand very easily on that house, so you can have like Finn, for example, javelin up through there, and you'll see that's exactly what I'm doing here with his support partners in range. But you can kind of just go at it however you want. And then the last part of this beginning portion of the map is that that unit you have to recruit is Marty. And I intentionally did not recruit him on the last turn, because there's this funny thing you can do where if you completely unequip him, before he leaves in the beginning arc. He'll show up in this map with his same inventory, which is to say nothing. But he'll run up to this shop, and once you kill the enemy brigand that's standing on top of it, he will actually buy an axe with his own money, which is not only hilarious, but it gets you a free weapon once you recruit him. But like I said, you can also like have Finn capture him or something, and then like pass him off to somebody else, because you're going to need Finn later on in this map. My Finn, I think, entered this map at like level 9 or so, and you might not have been able to see that easily because I'll be cutting preps out of each of these maps, so that might end in some kind of like jarring transitions in the beginning of maps. So if you see something like that or hear something like that, that's why. If you don't quite have Finn up to speed, you can get pretty much a full level for him off of this, I think it's a warrior over on the left. I don't think it's a berserker. And that's exactly what I do. In fact, I think I even get him an extra level before promoting him here. Because in order to get the Gaiden chapter, after this, you have to capture the boss and not release him before you seize the map. To do that, you're sort of limited in what characters you can use. Finn is the best at doing it, and I think I had started to mention during the Manster chapters that if you really want to hold Fergus back, he can probably do it. I've never done it myself, but the Brave Sword is pretty good for that reason. If you have the Brave Axe and didn't leave it on like Dagdar, for example, then maybe Brighton, if your Brighton is good, can do it. Maybe Dawson if he's not fatigued, especially if he accumulated a good number of levels from being used quite a bit during those chapters, if you play the way I do. But this guy here also has some decent items, I think, as promoted enemies usually do. So you can probably capture him pretty easily if you really want to. I like to use him as a pincushion a little bit by baiting him into attacking at 2 range. And then, units like Callion can take a shot and get some experience. The reason I usually bring Safi here, even though it's kind of overkill to bring both her and Nana, is that it's very good experience. It's an easy map, but you usually get at least one person poisoned, which means there's lots of healing opportunities, as long as you don't cure it. I usually only prefer one person to get poisoned, and I think, yeah, Finn got poisoned here, so I'm going to need to cure that before we continue too much further. But like once you've cleared out this initial group here, there's really nothing left except for the boss. However, reinforcements do come intermittently from a few different points, but in order for that to really matter, you'd have to be pretty slow and not proactive about sending units down to take care of them, which I think is difficult even if you don't really know what you're doing in this game. Shiva, if you haven't carelessly gotten him killed, is a pretty good choice to bring along to this map. I don't think I've mentioned that weapon triangle is a factor in this game, but it's, I think, like the lowest amount of difference that it makes of any Fire Emblem game, aside from those that don't have it at all. I think it's like 5%. So it's not something that I generally think about at all. Like I don't have any qualms with sending axe users up against sword users, which you saw in the last chapter, unfortunately. So here is just about where I'm going to be promoting Finn. And I gave him some scrolls that I was pretty sure give strength bonuses. And that paid off because I think he did get like 2 strength procs on his 2 levels in this map. And that's going to really help on this boss. Here I'm just getting in a couple of useless shots with Ronin, just for some experience, because why not? But this is where having Nana is really useful, because even with a pretty good Finn, he just isn't really damaging the boss that much once you go into capture mode, because that cuts all your stats. So what I have to end up doing is using my other units to weaken him in like semi-risky ways. And I have definitely accidentally killed this boss before. And it's really frustrating, especially if you're playing Iron Man, because you get 2 characters back in this Gaiden, and you also get some really, really good items. And it's not that difficult of a chapter. So it's aside from the idea that during an Iron Man it might be sort of risky to go toe-to-toe with this guy in some ways, it's just a no-brainer to visit that Gaiden. If you take way too long, this guy, who is, believe it or not, he's actually a wyvern rider, he will eventually mount and leave. And while that is, if you don't care about the Gaiden, that's an easy way to get him out of the way, he will also attack on his way out, believe it or not. And I found that out the hard way on like my first or second run. So, but as long as you're not taking an absurdly long amount of time, you don't have to worry about that. You can just get a little bit of extra experience from these bandits. There's almost no danger unless you leave some particularly weak units in range. They come from the very edges of the map, so it'd be tough to get ambushed with like Safi or somebody. The thing with the axe fighters is that you would think that they'd be like okay at capturing this guy, but they do almost no damage and lose a lot of attack speed when they're capturing. And if you don't capture to try and like weaken them, chances are either Halvin or Ashian is going to crit this guy. Ashian, just because of the only axe worth anything for him is the Poochie, and it has such insane critical rate, and he has pretty much guaranteed crit on the follow through a lot of the time. And believe it or not, Halvin actually has pretty high pursuit critical, higher than Ashian, I think. I think it's like 4. So he can easily crit the boss, especially if you try and give him Brave Axe. So those guys are kind of out. As you can see here, Finn, if he crits on one of his Brave Lance hits, then it's like he can probably do it in 1 round, maybe, but he doesn't here. And then what I decide I want to do is have Nana weaken him, but Nana has some crit rate, so you got to wait for this guy to heal up. He has a bunch of different stuff in his inventory, like he has a Vulnerary, he has a Nightproof, that if you're not sure if you can kill him or not, then you can steal it off of him if you bring one of your thieves. Probably only if you bring Lithis, because I think only he has the speed to do it, probably. I haven't double-checked that. But typically, like, Lara is often useless for stealing from bosses just because their stats are too high. And Lithis sometimes clears it, sometimes doesn't. You can do some shenanigans sometimes where you have somebody get captured and then you can probably steal an item off somebody. That works with like the Chapter 12 like mid-boss, but it doesn't work with bosses on Gates and Thrones because they are set not to capture. That would be a really easy way to get rid of bosses in this game if that worked, but it does not. So don't try to do that. So yeah, basically the only guys that really work that well for weakening the boss here are like Leaf and Dana. And if you bring somebody who can brave sword him, that's a different story, but I like to ride Fergus so much that he never is available for this chapter, and Shiva obviously is not an option. But as to how you're supposed to know to capture this boss and hold on to him, the dialogue between him and Gomez, who's the boss of the next chapter, sort of is supposed to clue you into that, like, this guy here is like half in with the bandits. So you're supposed to think like, oh, okay, well, if he's not strictly loyal to these guys, maybe we can capture him and squeeze some information out of him. I think that's what they were going for, but it's pretty obscure, honestly. But other than that, this whole end portion of the map is just a matter of being patient, mathing out these attacks, making sure that you don't kill this guy, checking your turn count if you are working very, very slowly. And eventually you'll get the mix right as far as damage. Bosses don't have variable stats, as far as I know, in this game, ever. So it's not like you can re-roll his stats. Um, but that's kind of a good thing in a way, because then you can plan it out a little bit better if you have to retry the map and you're not Iron Manning. But once you've captured him, that's pretty much it. Hold on tight, make sure to take his items, and then you can seize, unless you want to, stick around and use your guy's last turn to pick apart some bandits. But that's pretty much it for Chapter 8. I will see you in Chapter 8 Gaiden. Enjoy the last minute or so of the map.